All right, Roto Grinders, here we are. It's not Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday. It's a Wednesday night. It's EMac. We get to be on another night here. I've got a couple familiar co-hosts for some of you and some familiar to me. I've got Rookie Blitz, BryanFontaine, my counterpart on the Thursday night show, is joining us Wednesday night. We had a little scheduling adjustments and quirks we needed to do, so we've kind of got the shows are kind of switching between Wednesday and Thursday. But we have the stalwart, the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Beermakersfan Prince is here. So Chris, talk to me. Since this is your show, lead us off. Let us know what's going on the last week. I mean, was it a good one? Was there? I mean, hey, Aaron Rodgers, 6 touchdowns in the first half. That had to be a good one for you.
Love that, yes. I was sitting there watching the game. My buddy is a huge Bears fan, and you don't know, I have 3 daughters, and we had a little bet, and his losing part of the bet was he has to come overnight and watch my daughters while me and the wife go out on a night out. So it was a great week for me, just in that fact alone. So, yeah, good game by Green Bay, good DFS week, and things are getting to the crunch time here. Time's running out to qualify. So another big week here, week 11, and excited to have you guys here on the Wednesday show. Nice to switch it up every once in a while.
Yeah, we can't let things get too stale, and we can't ever let Boggs stay in his comfort zone. We gotta shake with his OCD just a little bit.
Oh, that's happening. We'll see. Miss those guys. Love doing a show with those guys, but really looking forward to this as well.
All right, and Brian, talk to me. So your team has the big game this week. Tom Terrific wearing those Uggs, going to be taking on Peyton. Not Peyton Manning, the new Peyton Manning, Mr. Luck, Mr. Andrew Luck. Are you geared up for that one?
Sorry, guys. I've been dropping in and out. Whatever you just said, I totally missed. So.
Well, that's all right. It was no problem. We were just saying, are you all ready to watch your team, led by Tom Terrific in the Uggs, against Andrew Luck for this?
Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah, that'll be a great game. It's funny with all these games that have the insanely huge high over-unders here, and I'm not quite sure it's going to get there, but it should be a good game. I mean, basically a pick-em. You know, you got the Colts with the -3 at home, so could go really either way. So hopefully we see a lot of fantasy fireworks in that one.
It should be a good one. It should be a good one. All right, let's dive on in here to the games without any further ado. We will follow the general, for those of us that are new, which would be me and Brian, we will follow the general guidelines of the show principles, which will be Brian will give us his thoughts on the visiting team. Chris will give us his thoughts on the home team, and then if there's anything additional that we need to cover, I'll chime in or they'll chime in, and we'll just all kind of make sure that we're going to play nice tonight. So let's start her off. We've got the Thursday game, 8:25 kickoff. Not an exciting over-under, 42, one of the lowest on the week. We have Buffalo coming on into Miami. Now, I will say I have liked the defenses for both of these teams at various points throughout the year. Picked on the running backs at various points throughout the year, but it seems like the running backs are all kind of hurt now. And I don't know where I'm really going to go with this outside of maybe an early defense, maybe an early kicker, just what the heck. But if I play any Thursday lineups, I'm not seeing anybody really jumping out at me. Brian, who do you like from Buffalo's side?
Yeah, our Thursday night show, I talk about just fading the game altogether. I'm just not seeing any reason to roster any of these Bills players for the Thursday night locks. The one guy may have been Sammy Watkins. It looks like he's going to get matched up on Cortland Finnegan, and that's a winnable matchup. But he's got one of those mid-range salaries, especially $5,700 on sponsored DraftKings, which is kind of right in the middle. I mean, if he has a big game, it could pay off, but just the value isn't screaming right there. Kyle Orton kind of turned into a pumpkin last week. Wasn't playing all that well, and Miami, you touched on it. I think they've got a fairly strong defense. I think per PFF they have the #1 defense in the NFL on their grading basis, and it's legit. I mean, they kind of held the Detroit in check for the most part, as much as you can keep Megatron in check. So, the running backs are really just kind of in flux. Fred Jackson's back now, muddies the water. We saw what Bryce Brown could do, but then we also saw the boneheaded plays with the fumble. So I just don't want to play roulette, especially on a Thursday lock, to try to figure out which one of those guys is going to get the lead role. And still, he's running into any of those guys are going to run into a really tough defense on the Miami side. So I would probably recommend fading the game altogether. The one play, like I said, I would probably be interested in is Sammy Watkins to be a little contrarian.
Sorry about that. Does that mean you're actually going to be playing for the second week in Thursday night games?
Yeah, actually, it worked out really well for me, EMac. I faded that whole Thursday game, and I basically just reset my entire roster on Sunday and ended up cashing that GPP, so I'm all set.
There you go. See, I told you we're going to get you playing some Thursday games, and it's going to be NBA, and then it's going to be NBA every night, and then it's going to be baseball, and then you're going to be on the back of some magazines like one Chris Beermakersfan prints.
Yeah. He's got the skills to do it, so we'll get him there, no doubt about it. So I'm with him completely. These Thursday games, I rarely will play them. If I do, I try to avoid the plays in the game. So last week it was Jeremy Hill. I believe his ownership was 70% in some of these big tournaments. So I don't care how good the play is. Unless he goes off completely, I don't want a guy that's 70% owned. So this game, I don't think you're going to have anybody that reaches those levels. For me on the Miami side, love the defense. I mean, we did against San Diego. To shut that team out, now you got an average Buffalo offense coming in led by Kyle Orton. I definitely think the Miami D would be in play if you are playing. But again, these guys will be popular. People love to load up guys on Thursday night in these lineups in these tournaments. So the defense would really be the only way I'm going. Lamar Miller's banged up, so who knows how many carries he's going to get. Tannehill hasn't been bad, but I don't know that I want to go there. Buffalo, pretty good defense. I think there's better ways you can go. I agree with Brian completely. I'm staying away from this game 100%, especially on the Miami end. Just not seeing anything that stands out or worthwhile.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a good one to more or less stay away from. I'm not loading up as much on FanDuel Early Lock this week as I do normally. Had a rough little week out there with a little too much Jeremy Hill, and which I thought was okay for his price. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. But I followed that up with some Devontae Adams, some Matt Forte, and I had some other Bobby Rainey. Pretty much across all my lineups. And I normally like to play a lot of lineup sets, but I played those guys as my core lineups because I was all over the Sanchez. Made for a good night. Thank God he and the 2 garbage time touchdowns by Kelvin Benjamin propped up a little bit of my all-time worst losing week. Otherwise, I think I would still be having one of those patented BryanFontaine shower cries right about now.
Those are always...
learn more about that.
Well, you gotta watch our show from time to time, Bear. Gotta watch our show.
I catch as many as I can, man. Again, I love you guys, so I see it as many times as I can, but I'm not familiar with that. So
I can't even take credit for the shower cry. That's a Denny Carter thing.
Yes, but you zinged it in there. See, this was fun, Bear. Before we all met up in Vegas, we got to do one show with Brian because we were the Thursday night show. So we did a show, and Cards and I have done. I think we think we've done close to 150 shows together. So we work pretty well. We can just jump on with 30 seconds notice and we're good to go. But with Brian on there, we thought, oh my God, this is a new guy. So Cards and I were talking, we got to make sure we involve him. Let's see what happens. And he was a little calm that first show. I got to hang out with him in Vegas, as did you, and a bunch of other people. We got him out of his shell. Oh my God, last weekend he just opened the opening show, just zings Cards right off the bat. And Cards and I were so proud because Brian's all grown up now.
Welcome to the family, brother.
All right. Back to football. Back to football. Atlanta cruising on into Carolina. 46 over/under. We've got some less than stellar passing defense. We've got some receiving options here. I don't know about the running backs. What are you looking at for Atlanta this week, Brian?
Oh, I planted my flag last week with them, especially Ryan and Julio, and I guess apparently most of the guys on DraftKings did the same thing there. So, Julio did all right. He would have been better off if he got a touchdown, getting over 100. 100 yards helped, but getting in the end zone, that one went to Roddy White. So I'm willing to go back to I'm willing to go back to these guys, and not that I'm gonna make them prime plays at all. I mean, I'd like them better if they were at home than on the road here. They just tend to play better in the dome than they do on natural grass. The prices have come up on these guys just a little bit, especially Julio. He's up to 7K on DraftKings. He's got the best matchup. He's going up against Melvin White, most likely, and that's a very winnable matchup for him. I think, unfortunately, he's going to be another popular play this week, so I just don't know if I'm ready to invest. Now, we talked about on a Thursday show last week with Matt Ryan, and I thought he was really going to be able to not feel the pressure as much as he had, and he only had 1 sack. Had a couple scrambles, but only passing for 219 yards and a solo touchdown just isn't going to win anybody any fantasy matchups. So I'm just not really willing to go all in on these guys like I was last week. And the matchup is still fairly good, but it wasn't as juicy as it was last week against the Bucs. So I think Julio Jones is the main guy I'm looking at in this matchup. I don't think I can really trust Matt Ryan, as even I might do like one GPP stack and have a Ryan and Jones team, but outside of that, all the secondary guys, I think Roddy White's also a decent play, but I don't trust Steven Jackson. I don't want anything to do with any of the other plays here. I think given the track record that some of these guys have, I think they're going to be a little overowned, and I think they're going to disappoint a little bit.
All right, Beer, anybody on the Carolina side that you're looking at? And remember, as Brian and I discussed last night, did you know garbage points count the same as regular points?
I try to tell people that all the time, and you don't have to have the good quality points. We're not above garbage points, so we'll take it. I had a lot of Benjamin as well, so I actually fell asleep. That game was so bad. Woke up the next morning, and it was like Christmas morning. Benjamin got 2 touchdowns. Hallelujah. So I think he's back in play. Going to be popular again. 4,900 just continues to be probably the most mispriced player on DraftKings in my opinion, but there is some value there. Just know his ownership levels will continue to be high. A guy I'm really high on this week, and I know Atlanta's been good against the tight end, but I really like Greg Olsen. If you want to find a way to differentiate, obviously from Graham, Gronk, Julius, all great plays every day of the week, but Olsen kind of falls in that middle ground between those studs and then some of the value plays. So 5,100 on DraftKings, not a bad price on him at all. Can't trust Cam. Was it just me, or did Cam look like he was about 900 years old in that game on Monday night? I mean,
he doesn't look right. I don't, for that one reason, I don't know how much I'm going to trust because I'm with you, Beer. I like Benjamin, I like Olsen this week, but I might actually like him a little bit better if Derek Anderson was back there slinging the ball.
Yeah, and I must agree with you. And how sad is that? So Cam is a guy that depends on his athleticism, his ability to run the ball at the goal line. We're not seeing any of that right now. The guy can barely get up out of the huddle or get himself off the ground. So I want nothing to do with Cam. I still think Benjamin and Olsen can get some numbers there. The running backs, if you're taking a shot, I guess it's Stewart, but I tend to avoid Carolina's backfield like the plague. It's just a mess. Always been a mess. The prices are cheap, but I think there's better ways you can go there.
All right, let's roll on over to Minnesota, heading into Chicago. Let's see, we got a 47 over under, 3-point favorite for Chicago. They get the home field goal advantage. I took last week off from Jerick McKinnon. Okay, he was on a bye, but we were still on a break.
Forced to do that, huh?
I'm back. I want to be there when he gets his first touchdown of the year. Now, I think it's going to be me, his mom, and his college roommate are going to be the only ones that roster him, but it'll be good. Am I crazy on this one, Brian? There's not much cheap running back value out there, and damn it, I can't go back to Bobby Rainey.
No, you really can't. You know what? I think Minnesota's actually in a really good spot this week. Beer, you said that the Bears we're talking pre-show about the Bears not really doing so hot. I don't know if they're really going to turn things around now. That team looks like it's fading fast. And, they got rid of Santonio Holmes. I doubt that was really the locker room problem that they've been having. But I think Minnesota's actually in a good spot. Now, this isn't a huge high over-under, but I think the guys that are on this team are priced well enough that I think they can meet and exceed value despite not having a huge line from Vegas here. I like Teddy as a GPP option. Now, he's yet to really throw for a ton of yards, but the last time out, at least completed 60% of his throws. He's throwing downfield. The stat I like to use, average depth of throw downfield, ADOT from PFF, was almost 12 yards. So he's taking chances. Cordell Patterson, I like him this week. I think he's in a good matchup. He's going to be looking at Kyle Fuller quite a bit. It's an above-average matchup for Patterson. It's not like a slam dunk. But I think given the bye week, I think they'll have a chance to maybe work in some more plays for him, get him more involved in the offense, kind of make a late swing at things here. I guess EMac, Jerick McKinnon, I have nightmares of Matt Asiata. Just, anytime he scores a touchdown, he has to make sure it's 3 in the same game. What does he have, 9 career touchdowns at this point? And 3 career touchdowns?
He has 3 or 4 3-touchdown games, and every time it was a fluke. Yeah, a lot of running backs would kill to be fluky like that.
Yeah, I don't know. The price tag isn't. If it was a lot lower than 4,600, maybe he'd be the guy that maybe could be the interesting contrarian play. I think McKinnon will be fairly. He'll probably be in that 10 to 15 range ownership wise. They would probably be a little bit higher if they were at home, but I think they're in a really good spot to put up some points. I didn't get a chance to see the practice reports, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the week we see Kyle Rudolph back?
Indeed it is. He's not on every site. He's not on FanDuel. I believe he's on DraftKings, and I checked several of the other sites spot checking, and he's there. He's kind of in that lower third on most of them for pricing.
Yeah, so, just looking at projections from PFF, they got him about 9.4 DraftKings points. So not anything stellar, but at 3,600, if he came back and he was able to use his time away and looks like he's a full go, he becomes an interesting play. But I think he's more going to be a bigger benefit to Bridgewater to give him that safety option down bottom. Go for Patterson deep, Jennings to move the chains. I think this is going to be one of those efficient games where Minnesota can put up maybe 24 to 27 points and be in a good spot.
All right, Spear, let's talk about the Bears.
Do I have to?
Yes, because they served you well last weekend. Your team beat them. You have a babysitter now. You got to talk them up a little bit.
They did. They did me good. So Matt Forte is always a guy. It's got to be at the top of your list. At DraftKings, it's a little tougher just because the difference between him to the next closest guy is $1,600. So 10-1 on Forte. It's not out of the question because there's a lot of cheap value plays that you can plug in. We've already gone over a few, and we're only a few games in. So Forte's a guy I always like. I think that price on DraftKings makes him a bit more contrarian than he would normally be. But in a full PPR site, I definitely think he's on your radar. The receivers, it's hard to say right now. Brandon Marshall obviously got hurt in the last game. They're saying everything's okay, everything's fine. Normally you can't believe any of that coach speak. So I think if anything, it could give a bump to Alshon Jeffrey. That's if Jay Cutler can pull his head out of his you-know-where. So I don't know. I'm with Brian in the sense that I think this team is done. Everyone's saying they're going to get up, they're going to come back, they're going to bounce back. I thought that spot for them was last week, and they got punched directly in the face. I don't see them getting up from that. So I'll have some Forte, I'll have some Jeffrey, a little bit of Bennett. Again, if you wanted to go different at tight end from the big three. Other than that, I think Minnesota goes in and wins this game, to be honest.
There we go. For those of you looking for a little tricky one on your pick and pools, it's not a bad one. Listen to Beer. He knows what he's talking about. All right, Brian, we got the next one. So Al Smizzle, and I'm assuming it's Al, came up with the phrase the Monday Night Hammer, which is when you play somebody on Monday night and they just bring it for you, much like Kelvin Benjamin when I, too, was fast asleep like Beer. So we got a question about so we had the Monday Night Hammer. What about the Sunday afternoon Mallet? What do you think about that, Brian?
That's clever. I like that. Man, I don't know. These Texans are going to be interesting. Obviously, I'm pretty familiar with Mallet. I've seen him play quite a bit in the preseason being a Patriots fan. I honestly don't know what to do with him. I mean, he's got the arm, no doubt about it. He could probably throw it 80 yards. just without much of a windup. So, I mean, that's not going to be the concern. My concern for him, and it always was in the preseason, was his ability to elude pressure and be accurate delivering the football. Now, he's got a couple guys that he's got the benefit of having DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson can go up and get the ball. I just don't know how accurate they're going to be. And I know a lot of people are looking at DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to see Joe Hayden, and Joe Hayden hasn't really been himself, but the last 2 games out, Joe Hayden's been more like himself. So I don't think it's as slam dunk as it looks like on the surface if you really kind of dig into the numbers there. So without being able to really trust Mallett, I don't know if I can necessarily trust Hopkins or Johnson in this one. For me, and this is all depending on health. I haven't seen any of the early practice reports or know how Foster's kind of bounced back. I know he got kind of dinged up in that last game against the Eagles, but I think Foster for me is the one play from Houston. If I'm gonna trot out a quarterback that he's going to be making his first NFL start, he's been in the league for a few years. He's been under Belichick, been under Brady. He's been with this coach for in New England. He could come out and surprise us all, but I'm not willing to, especially on one quarterback sites, trust even a GPP lineup with Mallett. So I'm going to roll out Foster and Foster only.
All right, Beer, what do you got? Maybe a little Cleveland defense? They've been sneaky good. Been averaging double-digit fantasy points over their last 5.
You got to like the D. They've been playing better. That's a good call. That's pretty much the only thing that stands out for Cleveland to me. With Mallett is interesting. I'm in the same boat. You don't really know what to expect from Mallett. We know he has a big arm, has had some preseason success, and this is a team that you can pass against. But over the last few weeks, looks like they've really tightened the screws. So a tough environment for Mallett to go into. I think he's an okay GPP play, but for the Cleveland side, it's tough right now. I love their running game, but you just don't know who it's going to be. Last week, it seemed like all 3 guys got work. They all ended up scoring touchdowns. Terrence West looks to be the lead back, but Ben Tate's complaining about his carries, so who knows if he's going to get back in the mix. I've always said Isaiah Crowell is head and shoulders the best talent there, in my opinion, but he can't hold on to the ball, and that's going to prevent you from staying on the field. So tough to decide on what running back you want to go with there. The receiver, is Josh Gordon back yet? One more week, right? Week 12?
I believe we got one more week.
One more week. So when he's back, he should
light him up. Light him up when he's back.
Right, exactly. So receiver-wise, who do they have? Andrew Hawkins might not play. Cameron's still banged up. So a lot of GPP flyers. Gabriel, Benjamin. I'm not going there. Give me the defense. Not much else here to see. Maybe mixing the running backs in a few lineups, but this screams a defensive struggle between these 2 teams to me.
All right, that's about it. Now we've got the Philly. So a couple good games here weren't figured into the pricing algorithms. One, Mark Sanchez, who Bear, I got apparently called out a little bit last Thursday on the message boards for my article where I said you got to go with Sanchez. Now I didn't claim his floor was 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I said I felt that was an approximation of where he would land. And I said I'll even give it, you throw in 2 picks. I'm fine with that for his price, his value. I just need him in a cash game. He's going to return 2 points over there on FanDuel because that's what I wrote my article for. Apparently that started a bit of a firestorm, so I agreed to take on all comers if they reached out to me on any site, and I would make sure that they got to play a Mark Sanchez lineup of mine. And I had probably had about a dozen or so people take me up on it, and I think I went 9-3, which wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. One of the guys I lost to, I apologize. I played him again this week. He's like, "Oh, you almost got me in garbage time," because I had Benjamin too, and I want to go, but that wasn't garbage time. So anyway, Brian, are you thinking that we can go once again to Sanchez because the price hasn't come up because he played on Monday night? Or is the Green Bay defense tough enough that maybe there are other ways to go this week?
See, this is one of the games as at this early juncture. I'm going to sit down and I'll be writing my my weekly column after the show, and he's been one of the guys I've been debating. Obviously, played a lot better than I thought he was going to. 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, like you even thought he might do too. And throwing 8, almost 9 yards downfield is decent. He obviously had quite the chemistry with Jordan Matthews, but excuse me, I think Green Bay is one of those teams that they're in the top 12, or so against quarterbacks. So is it a prime matchup? No. Based on sheer volume of plays, could he have a game maybe similar to what you probably projected last time with the 2 interceptions but still throw for 300 yards? Yes, but the wide receivers don't have the best matchups. I mean, it looks like Jordan Matthews has got a pretty tough matchup with Casey Hayward in the slot. Riley Cooper's going up against Sam Shields. Macklin probably is the best matchup of the three, but Tramon Williams has been playing better. He's at least a little bit above average for Macklin, but the price tag on him, $8,200, is pretty tough to pay on DraftKings, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Jordan Matthews, and I don't know if I can really condone it. I think he'll be okay, but his game this week has a serious letdown. As I've said most times, I don't like chasing points, and that would be a perfect example there. LaShawn McCoy burned everybody in the DFS community last week. I mean, he had such a good matchup, it was almost too good to be true, and that's a perfect reason to kind of go the other way, contrarian-wise. I mean, what was he, almost 55 to 58% owned in the Millionaire Maker? Incredible numbers, the fact that he was on that many rosters. Saved his day with a touchdown. But, I think he's going to find some tough sledding in this game. I think Green Bay's also being a little bit better against the run. And if Green Bay comes out, and I know Beer will talk about it in a little bit, but if they come out throwing like they did at the first half against the Bears, I mean, the Eagles may have to abandon the run altogether. So that makes them one-dimensional. And I just think I think the Eagles are a little bit of fool's gold this week. I'm probably not going to have a ton of exposure to them.
All right. Yeah, I rode with them pretty good last week. I may just want to sit this one out too, not press my luck. So, Bear, here it is. Your favorite team, your favorite discount double jack quarterback, 6 touchdowns in the first half. I don't think we're going to see that again, but we have questions, or I have questions. Devontae Adams, 1 catch, 1 little catch. Talk to me. Was that an aberration, or what's going on there? And discuss the offense, because there's quite a few ways you can go this week. I don't think we'll see the tight ends get 2 touchdowns this week, though.
No. With Philadelphia, if you go back and look, the way you beat them, I mean, there's a lot of ways, but their biggest weakness defensively seems to be the big play receivers. You go back to Benjamin last week. Going back 2 weeks ago was Hopkins. Arizona had 2 guys that had big games on them. All the way back to Allen Hurns. What's the strength of this passing game? It's the deep pass. So Rodgers to Nelson looks money again. I don't think you're going to get 6 touchdowns again, but we said the same thing with Roethlisberger after he did it. So nothing is out of the question here. This offense looks to be clicking on all cylinders. So those guys will be popular. I think Cobb again will be popular. Adams will not. And for the reasons you mentioned, 55 points, 6 touchdowns, and the guy gets 1 catch for 10 yards. So I am certainly feeling your pain on that. But we've always said, and I preach this, have a short memory, go back to the well. Going back years and years, a wide receiver 3 in Green Bay, probably the most valuable 3rd wide receiver in the league. They always have value. James Jones led the league in touchdowns in that role. So he's going to get his. You're not going to get all these touchdowns with Corliss and Bostic. That was random. So don't be afraid to go back to the well on Adams. Great price on him, so I think he's a fantastic play. Lacey, again, I think you can go back there. This offense, it's clicking on all cylinders right now. So everybody's in play. If you ask me, against Philadelphia, they should have their way with this defense. And as for the Philly side, I'm with you guys. I'm kind of tempering expectations here. I think Green Bay drops the hammer on them. Loved Sanchez last week and talked him up, same as you, EMac, and he produced. This is a much tougher matchup against pretty good D against the pass. So I don't know that I have as much Sanchez this week, but all the Green Bay you can get him in there.
Yeah, I'll have a little bit of Sanchez. He's not going to be 30% of my cash games, though. Not this week, anyway. All right, let's talk Seattle going into Kansas City. It was a rainbow of Skittles flavors out there in the rain in Seattle, as our buddy Marshawn Beast Mode Lynch had 4 1, 2, 3, 4 rushing touchdowns to go with his 2 from the week before that. 6 touchdowns, over 60 points in 2 games. Pure insanity. That is just a lot of action. They're rolling on over to Arrowhead, where there is a chance of snow. Now, I don't know that means there's going to be a lot of snow on the ground, but it's going to be bitterly cold, and nobody really likes that. So I think we're going to see a lot of running game, but by both Seattle running backs. That would be Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson. What are you thinking you're going to see this week, Brian?
I heard that somewhere else too, but I was going to make that same point if you didn't, but. I don't know what the hell possessed me to do this last Sunday morning as I was kind of tinkering with lineups and looking at props and stuff like that, but for some reason I thought it would be a good idea to go with Mark Ingram over Marshawn Lynch in my main cash game lineup on DraftKings. I did have some exposure to him in GPP, but it just even we do this all the time, and it's just easy to have paralysis by overanalysis. But anyways, yeah, Marshawn Lynch. Love him this week again. The matchup's a lot tougher for him, but like you said, I think they're going to establish the run. Looking at the numbers for Russell Wilson, he again ran for 114 yards and a touchdown last week. The thing that gets me is, we think of him scrambling quite a bit. He only scrambled twice on those 14 carries, so those were 12 design runs that Pete Carroll dialed up for him. So they're clearly making an emphasis that they're not having a ton of success. It's been pretty well documented that this team has not been able to play. They're basically playing Russian roulette with their receivers every week ever since Percy Harvin left. Outside of Harvin's poor game this past week, he's done pretty well for himself with the Jets, but it's really tough to trust any of the receivers here. They just got some bad news about Zach Miller at tight end, so we won't see him the rest of the year. I do like Wilson, but not. I don't know if I could really trust him outside of a GPP lineup. The floor he gets because of the running yards is there, but you mentioned it. This is also one of the lowest game totals of the weekends. They're on the road in a tough environment. I trust Lynch a little bit. Doug Baldwin, if I had to pick one of the receivers to go with, I think he's got the best matchup against Chris Owens. Ron Parker definitely showed up and really stymied Sammy Watkins last week. He looks like he'll get Jermaine Kearse, so and Paul Richardson looks like he's going to get shut down corner Sean Smith. So if any of the guys are going to get going this week with Russell Wilson, it's going to be Baldwin. If you want to do a Wilson lineup, Baldwin would be the guy that I'd want to pair with him in the passing game. But EMac, you've said it plenty of times before. He's that guy that you could have with the naked stack. You don't necessarily need to pair him with any of his receivers. But I wouldn't look for a ton of fantasy goodness here. I think Wilson and Lynch have the opportunity to kind of meet value, but I wouldn't look for them to really kind of exceed that.
All right, over under passing yards. Russell Wilson 190.
Just barely over. I'd say maybe like 210.
Okay. Bear, where are you coming in on that over-under?
I'm saying under. This game screams 12-9, a bunch of field goals to me. So the kickers are in play, but the Kansas City side, who do you trust here? Jamal Charles, we know, is their best player. Going against that Seattle run D, don't like that matchup at all. So sprinkle him in some GPPs maybe just for the upside. That nobody's going to have him, but tough to trust that. Alex Smith, we know what he is. He's a guy. He's a game manager. He'll occasionally have a big game. This is not that game. Dwayne Bowe, no thank you. Going against Richard Sherman. People say Sherman got exposed by Beckham. Beckham's the exact type of receiver that Sherman struggles against. The athletic, the quick twitch. He has that. Dwayne Bowe does not. So I could see Dwayne Bowe getting shut down in this game. Really, the only guy I'm looking at here is Kelsey. I know Kelsey let a lot of people down last week, didn't do much, but here's what we know about Seattle D. They've struggled against tight ends, and Kelsey is the best weapon that Kansas City has in the passing game. So, honestly, I think he's really the only play, and even that is a GPP play. A lot better, safer tight end plays, guys like Olsen. We know the big three. So, Kelsey in a GPP, a little bit of Charles, but again, I think this is a game all about the kickers and the defenses. This screams defensive struggle, and like you said with the weather, that makes it even harder to pick these guys. So tough to love anything on the Kansas City side, to be honest.
All right, so let's look at the Cincinnati-New Orleans game going on into the Superdome there, 51 over-under. We have Cincinnati as a touchdown underdog on the road. Maybe Hill, maybe Sanu. Hill only if Gio Bernard is out one more week. That's all I got on this game. Anything you like there, Brian?
I mean, I guess I'll ask you guys, what version of Andy Dalton do we see? Because that definitely impacts what we're doing here. Because probably one of the I didn't catch much of the game live, but you complete 30% of your passes, you throw 3 interceptions, you're only barely throwing better than 10 yards downfield. He only took a couple sacks, but he just was not getting that offense going, and he totally laid an egg on that one. So Vegas has got a little bit more trust in Dalton than I probably would, so that makes me maybe trust him a little bit in a GPP. Now, I think if he's back to being average Dalton, which might be going to say quite a bit. I mean, some of these receivers got a pretty good matchups. A.J. Green at 6K, he's got a pretty good matchup against Keenan Lewis on the outside. Sanu's got a little bit tougher matchup with Patrick Robinson. It does look, as far as I know, it looks like Gio Bernard's going to be out another week, so all of the Jeremy Hill at 4,500. The only problem with that is everybody else is going to have Jeremy Hill on DraftKings this week, so cash game only play for me. And I think Beer can talk about this, but I think the Saints are going to come out hopping mad after dropping that close game. They should have won in overtime. It just depends on what kind of fight the Bengals have, and I could see Dalton hooking up a couple times with AJ Green, but then I could also see Dalton hooking up a couple times with some New Orleans Saints defenders. So GPP only in this game for me. There's not a lot of safety here, but there's some pretty immense upside, I think, with Green and Dalton.
Who has more touchdowns this week, Dalton or Sanu?
Well, they might start having Sanu sit back there and throw a couple bombs, but it's a good question. I still take the slight edge to Dalton.
All right. Bear, what do we got? We may have found a running back that has a lot of opportunity here. What do you think about New Orleans and Ingram? Oh, we may have lost Bear there. We'll start in on that one. So, covering the New Orleans side, Bear, are you with us?
I'm back.
All right, so we're on New Orleans. I was teeing her up for you. I was saying we may have found a running back with some good opportunity. That would be one Mr. Ingram. What are you looking at on the New Orleans side this week?
Yeah, I love Ingram this week. Good prices on him. Getting a lot of carries. That's the biggest thing I look for in my running back. A guy that's going to get a lion's share of the carries. 81 carries for him over the last 3 weeks. So really looks like the guy we saw at Alabama, starting to fulfill that potential, what they drafted him for. And it's helped that Pierre Thomas, Kyrie Robinson are sitting out. We know the Saints, infamous for mixing in 50 different running backs. So he's getting the work. Cadet, nothing more than a passing down back. So I love Ingram this week, and I think this could be a Drew Brees week. This division is a mess. I mean, these teams are all in play. Even Atlanta is only a game out of first, surprising enough. So this could be the game. I think a lot of people have soured on Brees. Gives you a nice floor. Even this year, he's still been good. He just hasn't been the Brees we've seen in the past. Hasn't been below 19 points in a game at home so far this season. So gives you that floor. We haven't seen the 350 and 3-4 touchdowns. I think this could be the week. I think Cincinnati, another team that got punched in the face last week, I don't know how they're going to respond. So I miss Brian's take on Cincinnati, but I think this could definitely be a game. New Orleans really puts the screws to them. Brandon Cooks, a guy I love. He plays much better at home on that fast track. So I'll have a lot of Brees to Cooks, a lot of Ingram, and, of course, Jimmy Graham's a given, a beast, no doubt about it, the number one tight end this week. Give me him over Gronk this week. So the Saints, all systems go. I think there's a lot of plays for the Saints this week.
All right, let's us discuss the San Francisco 49ers going to New York, face the Giants. Brian, do you think the Giants can defend a mobile running type quarterback?
I don't think so. I mean, they just showed us what Russell Wilson could do. So I
We've seen this script before. If Wilson did it, Kaepernick should be able to do it. And Kaepernick's done it earlier this season. And Kaepernick doesn't do it anymore. He's done it once this season.
Yeah, I hate to chalk that one up to like Narrative Street or whatever, but I do think the 49ers are in a good spot. Now they're going to have to keep, was last week a get-back game from them? I don't think so. They just happened. I think they got a little lucky with that win. I don't think they're going to have a ton of problems with the Giants, even though they are on the road. A West Coast team going east. This looks like it's a 1 o'clock start, so that's going to be a pretty early go for those 49ers. I think Kaepernick's in a good spot. I think the weapons are getting better. I know Crabtree's been kind of hit or miss, but he got open for that long pass at the end of the game that definitely helped. Bolden, outside of dropping tons of passes in the second half, has been playing really well. I like Vernon Davis quite a bit this week. He's that guy that, he's only $3K on DraftKings. Basically free. They're just saying...
He has more drops in the last 3 games than he does catches.
For $3K, I don't care. And the Giants can't really cover anybody. So, I'm actually going to have Davis on quite a few teams. I probably won't have Kaepernick as much, but I will have probably at least one Kaepernick lineup. I think he could be in a big spot. I don't, outside of maybe pairing him with Davis on one roster, I don't think you necessarily have to pair him with any of the others. Running game wise, just feels like we're going to start to see Carlos Hyde at some point. And again, he's a player that's 3K. Could be the week that he gets a little bit more carries than Gore. I know Gore kind of had the bounce back game last week as I checked the Magic spreadsheet. It's still only 3.5 yards per carry, and the problem is he's not getting a ton of yards after contact. So he is what he is. He's not gonna. He's more of a cash game play. If he's got any kind of a safe floor, it's there. The immense upside is no longer there. So I maybe as a just what the heck, just see what happens. And if you're really looking to save some salary, I don't maybe necessarily mind Carlos Hyde.
All right. Couple gimpy running backs. Sounds like it's time to talk about the Giants. Chris, who's there and who's going to be walking at the end of the game in their running back core?
I don't know. It's tough. Andre Williams didn't really do much in his opportunity, so Jennings looks to be back, looks to be the guy, and I think they're going to give him the full workload of carries. The problem is it's against a very, very good run D in San Francisco, so I don't know that you want to go there. His price, not bad on DraftKings, 4,600 I believe off the top of my head, 4,700. So not a bad price for a GPP, but you really want to go against the San Francisco run D. I do not. On the other hand, Odell Beckham really is looking like a player in this league. If you can do what you did against Richard Sherman, is there anybody out there that's going to be able to stop you? So I think the only thing holding this kid back, honestly, is Eli Manning. So I love his price as well. It's come up. It's still at 6K. I think there's a lot of upside there, and he's definitely kind of lessened the blow on losing Victor Cruz. Really stepped in and taken control. A lot of people thought this was going to be Randall doing this, and Randall's kind of let us down. So Beckham, really the only play I'm looking at here. Maybe a little bit of Jennings based on that price, but I can't trust Eli against San Francisco. Donnell is too up and down for me. There's a lot of good tight end plays this week. Even minimum guys like Vernon Davis, like Brian just talked about, I think I'd rather roster over Donnell against a team very good against the tight end. So love me some Beckham, a little bit of Jennings. Again, not a lot here in the Giants that I'm looking at.
All right, let's get on to the Denver Broncos. So, Brian, we know Manning is going to have a hand in darn near every touchdown this week that the Broncos have, so he's going to be good. Wide receivers, just pick them. One of them's going to do good. The narrative street says Thomas, D. Thomas, because he hasn't had a good game or hasn't had a touchdown in 2 games, and I don't think he has gone 3 games without a touchdown since Manning's joined the team. So obviously he's guaranteed something. But the running backs, we have Monte Ball, guy who's been hurt. We've got C.J. Anderson out of nowhere. We've got the guy who I don't even want to say his name because he cost me my entire week last week, Hillman. Oops, I said his name. Who are you looking at for running back? We know where the passing games where all the value or where all the scoring is. Where's the value in this one?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Thomas. I think he's the one guy. He's the most expensive guy, and I'm not sure where he ranks salary-wise on DraftKings. I'm not sure if he's the most expensive guy this week or not, but 8,600 makes it tough to pay off. But I think he's also got the best matchup of all these receivers. Looking at Janoris Jenkins, who can definitely get beat deep, and is a player that Thomas can give a stiff arm to, and can get some of those patent yards after catch. I don't necessarily know that I would necessarily want to pair him up with Manning, though. I think Thomas is the guy that you can just roll out there as part of your lineup, but not feel like you have to pair him with Manning. I don't know what the hell to do with these running backs, though. Here we are on Wednesday, recording Wednesday night, and I don't think any of the beat reporters know what's going to happen here. I think the early favorite is probably C.J. Anderson, but that people might be just going that way just because of recency bias. He's the guy that had the long touchdown, was able to put up over 25 fantasy points last week out of nowhere. I think he was actually owned on a couple of the Millionaire Maker teams, which is kind of surprising. Somebody must have had a DeLorean or something to figure that one out. Biff Sports Almanac. I just don't know. His price actually did have a chance to get jumped up because they played earlier in the day. He jumped up to 4,800. Monte Ball's 4,400. I don't necessarily know if I could really feel comfortable with either of these guys. And St. Louis's defense isn't great, but they recently have kind of held the 49ers under control. Jamal Charles didn't have a huge game. I just don't know if I can really trust any of these guys. They just look like they're value traps, and again, I hate chasing points, so I don't think I'm going to go Anderson just because he A, doesn't have the good matchup, and B, I don't know if we know how those carries are going to get split up or what the snap shares are going to be.
All right, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. There's going to be goodness to have. You're going to roll the dice with the running back. We may know more. It is Wednesday. All right, Chris, let's talk about something important. I was all fired up to do a show with Boggs when Dan announced me as the replacement, and he gave him a vote of confidence, and then he said, "You know what? We can't have you be the starter. We got to bring in BryanFontaine." What happened to Austin Davis? And is Sean Hill really going to start? This is like a reversal. What happened?
I don't know what's going on with St. Louis. They can't decide on a quarterback, can't decide on a running back. Trey Mason's been leading them in carries every week. They won't name the starter. Their one glimmer of hope, Brian Quick, goes down with injury, so this just is going to be a throttling. I don't see St. Louis hanging in this game at all. Whoever the quarterback may be, I guess they have some GPP garbage upside, but garbage time doesn't necessarily mean points. We saw that with Carr last week. So what's on the Rams to like? Jared Cook had a good game last week against Arizona. Who's not good against the tight ends? The receivers have been garbage. Mason has faced some tough matchups. I like this kid. Like his spark. I like his running ability. This is another team that's pretty good against the run. So honestly, I will not be rostering a St. Louis Ram this weekend. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're good plays. I'm not taking any of them in any of my lineups. So
what? Now, yeah, I know you do a little thing on the side for FanDuel. Can I interest you in Greg the Leg, $4,500, minimum price kicker?
No, don't even want him, EMac. Again, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and say there's good plays because I'm not seeing them. Maybe there's a Ram out there you guys like. Anybody?
Nothing.
Greg Zuerlein. That's it.
All right, so this is going to be ugly. Get all the Broncos in there you can.
All right, Brian, we're talking about a game. There should be some fireworks here. It's going to be exciting. Tampa Bay going on into Washington. Neither team plays good defense against the pass. What are you thinking about Tampa Bay there? And is it going to be Chris Sims week?
Oh, I don't know. That could happen. Who knows? Vegas doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in Tampa Bay. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Tampa Bay. I actually think Washington's in a really good spot here to put up some points. So whoever the hell the Bucks roll out at running back isn't going to matter that much. I think Charles Sims will probably get a couple more touches, but I think this game's all going to come down to how well Josh McCown can play quarterback and if he can avoid the pressure and get some of these big the Duncaneers the ball here. I could actually maybe make a GPP lineup with these guys. Just because of how bad Washington is against the pass, and I think they're going to be set up. And the fact that they're, on the road, a touchdown underdog, they're going to have to pass. You know that they're going to have to pass. And a lot of these receivers have got good matchups. I mean, Mike Evans is going up against Breland. Vincent Jackson is going up against Amerson. Hell, even Stevie's favorite guy, Louis Murphy's got E.J. Biggers. So all 3+ matchups. And McCown, maybe he gets a touchdown or two. I mean, on DraftKings, his price is $6,500. Nobody's going to be looking at him. I mean, he's not cheap. He's not expensive. He's right in the middle. He's on a poor team. Except if you pair him up with the receivers, I think Mike Evans is the guy that everyone's going to be gravitating to just because of his the recency bias. But I think I might actually give the slight edge to Vincent Jackson. He's been pretty close to a big game, and this could be the week. He's one of the rare guys in the NFL with 2 touchdown upsides, so I will have some exposure to him, not cash game exposure, but some GPP exposure to Jackson. Want nothing to do with the running backs, like I said. Safarian Jenkins is interesting, but I think there's a lot other ways to go, as Beer has pointed out. So, yeah, it could be. It could be big, but I just, GPP only, there's no way in hell I could trust any of these guys in a cash game lineup.
All right, Spirit, let's talk a little Washington. You know what? Alfred Morris, all of a sudden, RG3's the quarterback again, and Alfred Morris suddenly can score touchdowns. I'm not sure how that works. Talk to us a little bit about Washington.
You're going to think I'm a Washington fan here, but I love me some Skins this week. When you see the old six attack in some of the articles, you're going to see a lot of Washington in there. So I think there's a lot of plays from this game. I think Griffin makes for a great play. Tampa Bay, not a good defense at all, and I'll be nice about that, but just a horrible secondary. So I think this team's going to be able to expose that secondary big time. Griffin priced under McCown at $6,300, so good value on him. I'm with you on Morris. Morris looks great. Looks to be, again, the bell cow there, getting about 17 carries a week. I think it's the threat of RG3 running the ball, the read option. They don't run as much of it, but it still gives Morris an added dimension. The teams have to respect RG3's passing ability. It's just opening up more lanes for Morris, so he looks great. No problems with him as a play. Deshaun Jackson, one of my favorite wide receiver plays of the week. Big playability. Griffin's strength, throwing the deep ball. Jackson's strength, catching the deep ball. So one of my favorite combinations there in a GPP is RG3 to Jackson. I think Garcon will be under-owned. Jackson's been putting up the numbers, but I think Garcon could be in for a big game here. And Jordan Reed, the old recency bias, hasn't been doing much of anything. But going back to last year, him and Griffin had a good connection. Great value tight end this week, so they're all in play for me. I love Washington this week. I think they're in a great spot.
All right, moving right along. Oakland, San Diego. What the heck happened to the Oakland wide receivers? And, oh, my gosh, their tight end has like 700 targets in the last 3 weeks. All numbers approximate, but what happened to the wide receivers?
That's a good question. I was actually just looking up to see if there's any new news on RotoWorld about Andre Holmes, because he's one of the guys that I'm most interested in. One target, no catches, a big fat goose egg. And going back the last 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago he only had 13% of the market share of targets. This past week, that lone target only accounted for 2% of David Carr's throws. Don't call me David. I think the Raiders.
Derek Carr.
Yeah, I said Derek Carr first.
All right, just checking.
Just Freudian slip with David. These guys are probably projected as the lowest total of the week. Going on the road to San Diego. San Diego's defense has been playing pretty poor lately, but I think they're set up to do really well. I'm with Beer. I'm all over the Redskins this week. I'm also all over the Chargers this week. I think Phillip Rivers is in a really good spot, and he's going to open things up. The problem for that is I had David Carr written up last week. I thought he was in a really good spot to have to kind of keep pace with Peyton Manning, and it definitely didn't do that. He even tried, shoveling a pass to one of his linemen. Rookie wall could be oncoming for him. Hard to trust him. It's hard to trust anybody here. Maybe Rivera. I mean, just because he's been so targeted so heavily, but if Vegas is projecting these guys to score 17 points, I might take the under on that one. I'm just not intrigued by any of these Raiders this week.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. Tight end only. Bear, let's talk. We got a little bye week for San Diego, so that means they're going to be a little bit forgotten. Do you want to remind us of anybody that we might want to play?
Mr. Phillip Rivers, I think, is in a great spot this week. So you have the combination of what you just mentioned. Coming off a bye, a lot of people forget. Plus, they're going to look at the game log from last week and be like, oh, my God, what happened there? So I think he's in for a huge bounce back here. The problem with if you wanted to stack San Diego, who's going to get the catches? It's going to be Allen, it's going to be Floyd, it's going to be Gates. So I don't think you necessarily have to pair anybody with Rivers. I think he's a guy that spreads the ball out a lot. So don't bang your head on the wall trying to predict who it's going to be. Just roll him out separate. Don't even worry about tagging him. That being said, I think the receivers can make some good plays. Gates is a guy I'm going to mix in. Keenan Allen's price on DraftKings looks great at $4,500. I'll mix in a little bit of Floyd. The question mark is Ryan Matthews. How is his return going to affect the running game there? Is he going to be the primary ball carrier? They still going to mix in Oliver? Brown's still there, so I'll play some Matthews. I think he comes back to the starting role, and I think it's going to eat into Oliver, if anything. So all the Phillip Rivers you got, and I'll mix in and pretty much they're in a great spot. It's San Diego defense, one of my top defenses of the week. So looks to be a good spot for San Diego, no doubt about it.
Yep, and then a little cading for those of you playing on sites with kickers. All right, Detroit, Arizona, two of the stingiest running defenses there are out there this season, ranked 1 and 2, not only in rushing yards against, but in fantasy points against for running backs. Brian, what's going on with Detroit? Is there any running back you want to trust there?
No, not really.
Nobody's healthy. What happened to Reggie Bush?
Yeah, Bush got banged up a little bit in that last game. Theo Riddick is the guy that cut that touchdown to put them ahead. This is the lowest total, at least looking at some numbers from earlier in the week. This is going to probably turn into a defensive slugfest, I think. I think Arizona is going to play a little bit more conservative now that they're going to be turning back to Drew Stanton. I think that's going to impact the entire game flow of this. I don't see either team really running a ton of plays. The problem with this is obviously the one obvious play here is Calvin Johnson. I mean, he's in play every single week. The price on DraftKings came back up to $8,500. I think he's $100. He's either the same price as Demaryius Thomas or $100 cheaper. So, but he's going to match up against Antonio Cromartie, who's had a stellar season, has been shutting people down left and right. Not going to say that he's going to keep Johnson in check, but if you had to give me the over/under on say 90 yards, I might take the under this week. And I think Stafford's going to be under pressure. I don't think he's going to have a huge day. Golden Tate, I think he can help move the chains, but $7,500 on DraftKings. We talk about the low prices on some of these guys. That one just is eye-popping to me as being way too high. And he's got a pretty tough matchup against Jared Powers. So a lot of these lines, guys, it's Wednesday night. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen with these running backs. I'm pretty much just going to fade this entire side of the ball this week.
All right. Well, we have Chris talking about this. Let me know what the magic spreadsheet says about rushing touchdowns for Drew Stanton. Chris, what are you looking at for the running backs, the wide receivers here? Are you going with Brown or Brown? Not that Brown, but the other one. I don't really like any of the other ones.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Michael Floyd going into the year, so it's been tough getting away from him, and as the price keeps going down, I think he's down to $3,200 on DraftKings. And I'm debating, is he a good player or not? And the answer is no. The guy's just been bad, and standing in there is not going to help anything. So I'm with Brian. I think this is going to be a defensive game. I think both defenses are in play. I really like the Detroit defense. I don't think a lot of people will be on them, just based on Arizona being a better home team, blah, blah, blah. But Detroit's been a phenomenal D, and they're familiar with Stanton. So I like their D. Arizona D, probably in the top 10, I would guess, but this is ugly. I love Ellington, one of my favorite players in the league. Against that Detroit line, that Detroit front seven, going to be tough sledding. You got to think they're going to load up the box, force Drew Stanton to make some mistakes and throw the ball deep. So nothing here in Arizona either. I like. There's a lot of games this week, not a lot standing out. So these are the games, though, that if you want to make some different tournament lineups, these are the type of games that most people will avoid. That maybe you do look to a John Brown, hope he gets deep. Jaron Brown, maybe he gets deep. Fitzgerald, so maybe some deep targets on the receivers in a GPP. But even Ellington, I can't touch him, and I don't want anything to do with Stanton. So
yeah, no, the reason I mentioned John Brown, or I mentioned Brown, but it's John Brown, is he has more targets from Stanton than any of the other wide receivers, and that was with a healthy Larry Fitzgerald and a healthy Michael Floyd. So I just throw that out there. It might be a little bit sneaky. All right, Brian, what's the tail of the tape magic spreadsheet tell us about Stanton's rushing chances for a touchdown?
Let's see here. Well, this is like first time in a couple years he's had some action here, and scrambling on 3% of his dropbacks, and not a ton of. Actually, does have some design runs this year, but only 10 attempts on 17. 10 attempts, 17 yards. I mean, he's one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league. I think he's got some accuracy problems, but yeah, Magic Spreadsheet says no.
All right, I'm not going to give him the Teddy Bridgewater guarantee, but I do have a couple GPP lineups with Stanton, only because I think there's a chance he can throw one and run one in, and he's so cheap. And the rest of my lineup looks really good. Again, that is more of an entertainment value GPP play for me. All right, 2 games left, the primetime games, the big scoring. Well, at least 3 of the 4 offenses are big scoring. Here it is, Brian. It's the whole reason you're on the show this week.
And every week.
Night football. Your New England Patriots. Fire away.
Yeah, this is going to be this is going to be fun. I mean, I still think this game may have a tough time getting to that, almost 57.5, 58 point over/under, which is staggering when you really look at it. But when you look at the quarterbacks, they are the type of guys that can really supersede any perceived tough matchups, and a lot of these wide receivers for New England do have tough matchups. Brandon LaFell going up against Vontae Davis, I want no part of that. He very easily could, do well against him. I think Julian Edelman going up against Greg Toller is where I'd like to go. You have to know that I almost said Drew Bledsoe there. That was bad. You know that Tom Brady's going to be really looking on the field for where his ex-teammate Darius Butler is, because he will go after him and go after him often. I think the receiver that lines up against him is going to be one of the ones that gets the ball quite a bit. He is absolutely atrocious in coverage. So I like Edelman the best of the receivers. Beer said he had Graham as his number 1 tight end over Gronk. I think Gronk's going to have a good game, but 7,900 for a tight end makes it awfully tough to make value. He basically needs to score you 30 points. He's a 30-point player, but I think the masses are going to be on Gronk, and I think it's the week to maybe not be on him, just because he's going to be so popular. It's the highest over-under the week. Perceived good matchup. Even if he catches a touchdown and maybe 100 yards, he's still going to fall flat of reaching value. So I'm going to be looking the other way there. Tom Brady, you have to consider him, but at 9,800, that's a pretty steep price to pay. He has played really well against the Colts in recent memory. I will have some exposure to him. The guy that I want the most exposure to, I am going to write him up in my article this week, is Shane Vereen. Anytime the Patriots are on the road and they're not necessarily favored, he's the guy that they'll turn to. This game script fits up can't even talk tonight, guys. It suits him perfectly because he's going to get a lot of check down throws. He's going to get some carries up the middle. The Colts are vulnerable against the run. I don't think we're going to see a ton of Jonas Gray in this one. Might even see a couple wheel routes for Vereen. I think he's in a really good spot. At 5,500 on DraftKings, he's right in that LaShawn McCoy price range for last week. I'm going to have Vereen on a heck of a lot of teams, and I think he's got 20-point plus upside.
All right, Spear, anything you want to tag on from that game or take us through the greatest quarterback, soon-to-be greatest quarterback in the game, Andrew Luck?
Yeah, can't argue that. I just wanted to go off his Vereen point. I just wrote Vereen up in my FanDuel picks for this week. I think this is a Vereen game script. The Colts giving up the third most, I believe, passing yards to the running back position. So it just feels like a Vereen game. I agree 100%. Some of those receivers, tough sledding there. So he may have to take on more responsibility, run more routes. So he's my top play from the Patriots side. As for the Colts, love me some Andrew Luck. I think this guy, like you said, EMac, probably might be the MVP at this point, and I don't know that there's an argument there. It's just been great week in, week out, getting it done, getting numbers, putting the ball in the air 45-plus times, seems to hit 350 yards every single week. So I think he's in play. T.Y. Hilton, I don't know what to do with because obviously he's going to get the Revis Island coverage, but he's been so damn good, and I think it could be a contrarian play, but tough to go against Revis. So Reggie Wayne may get a bump here. Maybe we see a little bit more Moncrief. So Luck's going to get his numbers. They got to go somewhere, and if they're not going to Hilton, makes me bump those guys up even more. So could be a little resurgence here for Reggie Wayne. Really like him on DraftKings this week in the full PPR. His price is way down, so not a bad price on him at 5,300. If you wanted to take the shot on Moncrief, I believe he's minimum price. Dwayne Allen has been a touchdown machine. Problem is he doesn't get any targets, so you're really relying on that touchdown there. So a lot of luck. Running backs, I like Richardson this week. I like him more than Bradshaw this week. Like the price. He seems to be the preferred option at the goal line. Unless they're passing, that's when they go with Bradshaw. But I think Richardson at his price can pay that number off more easily than Bradshaw can. Against a run D that's not very good. Patriots run D's been struggling all year. I don't think this is going to be any different. So really like Andrew Luck, Bradshaw, and Reggie Wayne I think could be sneaky.
Bradshaw's had 9 touchdowns on the season. There's only been, I think, 1 or 2 games he hasn't scored a touchdown in. 7 of them have been receiving. He gets 13.5 touches per game, yet is still scoring double digits. If he does not get that touchdown, he's going to crush your value because you're on most sites you're utilizing a running back spot for him. So he's the one guy I'm on the fence on. So here's a hypothetical question for you. So Belichick, the story of course goes that he likes to take away the top option on the other team. Now, I don't think you can take away Andrew Luck, so you probably focus on T.Y. Hilton. Luck is the kind of guy that can go to any other receiver. He's like Peyton Manning in that regard. He's like Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't matter. He's not going to have eyes only for his top guy. I agree with you. A lot of people are going to be scared off of the Revis Island, so I think T.Y. is a GPP play only just because, my God, looking at those numbers, though, his game log is just fantastic. So I think he'll get some. I don't think it'll be a dominant game. But how would you go about shutting down Luck if you were Belichick?
Yes, me or Brian?
I'm asking you first, and then Brian gets the rebuttal.
I think you're not going to stop Luck. I think he knows that. I think he's going to get his numbers. I think he nailed it. I think we're all on the same guys. Hilton is the biggest weapon in this passing game, the biggest deep play, deep ball ability. So he's the guy I think that they're going to have Revis on, roll some coverage toward, and make an older, aging Reggie Wayne beat them. Make a rookie Dante Moncrief beat them. Make Hakeem Nicks beat him, who's been non-existent. So I think these other receivers aren't going to put the fear in anybody. I think coverages are going to be all over Hilton. So like you said, he'd be GPP only for me. Been playing his ass off, but I'm going to have to avoid him this week, I think.
We'll keep an eye on him for next week, though. If he gets that little bump down, and we'll be talking about him next week. All right, Brian, how is King Bill gonna win this game?
I think they're going to probably play a lot of zone. I think that what they're probably going to do is give a lot of the underneath stuff. I think when you end up looking at the game log at the end of this week for Revis, you'll probably see him give up anywhere between 4 and 6 catches for maybe 60, 70 yards, and people are going to be like, well, Revis stinks. I don't think they're going to let any of these receivers get deep on him. I think they'll try to keep Hilton from getting deep on him. I think they're going to try to keep Moncrief from getting deep on him and really just kind of make them just kind of get some chunk yards and hopefully some of the cornerbacks break up some of those passes. So, I think at the end of the day, Luck's going to have 300 yards passing, but I think it's going to be on quite a bit of number of attempts. I still think he's a decent play. I like Brady just a smidge more. But that's how I would look to stop Luck, and it's more just kind of limiting him and just kind of make him grind out really long drives and not really let any quick strikes up.
All right, and that's kind of what they did in the last game. In the playoff game, is 20. I'm just going off the top of my head here. 21 completions, 40 attempts, 330-ish yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 picks. So this is not unheard of, but still like Luck. All right, last game of the night, Monday Night Football. Let's talk Ben Roethlisberger. Now I'm the one who's getting tired and can't talk. Roethlisberger, 5 road games, has 5 touchdowns in those road games. Talk to me. What's going on? This is a guy that has had 2 home games with more than 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think people are going to be off him after the poor game last week. I don't necessarily know I'm going to be on him per se, but I'm going to be all over Antonio Brown. I love the fact that he finally had, air quotes, a poor game last week. He gets a cornerback by the name, and I had to look up how to pronounce this. It's W-R-E-H Wilson, which I guess is Ray Wilson, pretty much is a turnstile, and is going to see a lot of Antonio Brown. I think he's going to see a lot of the back of Antonio Brown's jersey. I don't think it's rocket science to tell everybody he's one of the top receivers in the NFL, but I think he's, out of all the receivers, maybe second to Demaryius Thomas this week. I think he's in line for another big week. I think you have to pay up for him in cash games. I think he's a viable option in GPs. I think recency bias-wise, people are going to look to the last game and think, well, here comes regression. I just think he's in such a good spot, and Tennessee isn't really going to offer up a lot of resistance. I think the emergence of Martavis Bryant has really kind of helped him. I can't call another week with a touchdown from him. Last week he kind of got that towards the end of the game and kind of saved it. Up until then, he didn't really have a big fantasy day. So I like Bryant as a player. I don't like him at 6,200 this week on DraftKings. You can't really trust Heath Miller at this point. You really can't trust Wheaton. I will have probably some exposure to Le'Veon Bell, but for me, this is all Antonio Brown and nothing else.
All right, this is it. It was a marathon. We got to the last game. Full slate. Oh, Jesus, is anybody even on a bye this week? This took a long time. All right, this is it, Beer. I know this is the time where you can pan over to the wall of the magnificent house that we've seen on ESPN in your film career and show us the fathead of Justin Hunter. I know it's there.
Yeah, add him to my list along with Michael Floyd.
Are you giving up this week? Both of them?
I'm not. I can't quit Justin Hunter, and at 3,100, it's like feeding crack to a crackhead. Give me more. 3,100. I'm still going back to the well, and he killed 2-3 of my tournament lineups last week, and here I am banging my head against the wall again. I'm going to do it again. So tough to love anything on Tennessee. I mean, he's been so inconsistent. The potential is there. Flashed a little bit earlier in the year, but recently he's been terrible. Kendall Wright's really taken a dip. I hear a lot of talk. Mattenberger, good value at quarterback this week. I'm not seeing it. I don't think this guy's a starting level quarterback in this league. I know you can beat up Pittsburgh with the pass, but not a lot here I love. So I'm still going to go back to the well and Hunter. Other than that, I haven't rostered a Tennessee running back all year. That's not going to change for me. I don't think Sankey is a very good running back, to be honest. So I'm not going there. Mixing a little Hunter. I love Antonio Brown. Like Brian said, I'll have a ton of him. But Tennessee, hard to love in this one, even in a good matchup. Just too many average guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's tough coming from University of Washington alum with Bishop Sankey and Jake Locker. It's just painful. Don't play those guys. They were great in college. One can't stay healthy. The other did it on volume in college. So, all right. Any final thoughts, Bryan? And do you need to say, on my shows we always like to do birthday shout-outs. Any birthday shout-outs you have for anybody?
Yeah, actually, my son is turning 3 tomorrow, so that's my birthday shout-out.
All right. Final thoughts on the games?
We've got a good slate. I think, as Beer said, we've got quite a few duds this week. Offer some GPP intrigue, but play it fairly safe this week, grinders, and hopefully one of you takes down some of all the big money now available out there.
All right, Chris. Last thoughts, and which gas stations will you be going to this weekend for your sightings?
I'm going to be hiding from gas stations this week, so I'm going to avoid that. But great doing a show with you guys. I think this is the first time with both of you, so it was awesome. Thanks for joining me here on Wednesdays, but looks like a fun week. Again, a lot of games that jump off the page as targets, a lot of games that I think could be sleepy targets, and a lot of under-the-radar fantasy goodness. So good luck. Sorry this took so long. It was definitely a marathon, but like Bryan said, a lot of money out there to be won. So go get some of it, and best of luck to everybody out there.
All right. Thank you, Roto Grinders, for letting us host the show. Thank you, DraftKings, for sponsoring another fun event. Dan, get this bad boy turned into a podcast. We don't need people complaining about data plans and the amount of internet this is going to take to watch. With that, good luck, gamers.